everyone. This is Hansa Iyengar. I'm a Senior Principal Analyst at Omdia's Enterprise IT Strategic Practice. And today I have with me Sven Strasberg from IBM. Sven is a Principal Solution Architect for Sustainability Software Europe. Sven, what is sustainability software? This is the first time I'm hearing about it.
Most people do find it a little bit strange that IBM actually has a complete division focused on sustainability. And really what we've done is taken a number of our operational tools together and put them into one place, so that not only do we talk about ESG reporting as you would expect, but also how do you achieve that? How do you drive that operational improvement specifically into the OT space, not just the IT? So it really is about supply chains or engineering or building management or manufacturing improvements. So we've taken a view that says you have an ambition. So how do you realize it? And that's the decision we took. Bring the tools together, and that's where we are.
That's amazing, and I think it provides a very cohesive, narrative when you talk to clients. But here's the first question I have for you in today's Fast Chat. We are looking at indications that we might be entering a period of economic uncertainty, right? And during a time like this, businesses kind of tend to focus more on cost optimization and operational efficiencies, but the call of the hour is to focus on sustainability, because we are also staring at significant potential for disruptions caused by climate change and impacts of climate change that is being seen globally already. So what can businesses do to make the case for sustainability initiatives in this kind of a scenario?
It's actually a really interesting question, because it's one that comes up both in the good times and the bad times.
Absolutely.
People have this view that sustainability is an overlay. It's something you bring in. It's something nice to have. And we actually take a different view. It's actually fundamental to the continued digital transformation that companies have been on for the last 20, 25 years. This idea of going from a manual process to manual digital, now to full digital. It's changing the ethos. It's bringing some of those elements in. So when you are entering into a bad time, certainly as an economic downturn as we have now, what we need to start to think about are those operational improvements. What are the cost benefits that we can bring in and leverage those for a sustainable argument? It's not about this or this. It's about this and this. So if I have projects at the moment, it's no point in saying, okay, well, that's just for operational improvement. That doesn't work. Operational improvement have always two benefits. There is a reduction in cost. We know that. There's also obviously the improvement in output and efficiencies, all of those good things. But each one of those has a counterpart within the sustainability practice of an organization. And it's about understanding what they are and bringing them in. Yes, we know that there are big cost constraints where you have massive investment needed for new machinery, for example, if you're in the manufacturing space. But then if that is an issue, why don't we then look at what we have and see how we can actually leverage that device better, or that series of equipment better, in order to meet the goals that we have? We know that we're not going to meet them absolutely perfectly, but at least we're on that journey. And as I said earlier, it's about turning that ambition into reality. And the way we see it is you bring both together. It's not either or. So the conditions are not perfect, but that also brings opportunity to actually leverage that kind of strategy. And that's our take on this. This is what we want to drive into our clients and our opportunities.
And that's a great view. And when we were talking about this earlier, you mentioned a term, sustainable transformation. So what does that mean from your perspective?
So from our perspective, it is a way of, as I said, taking that digital transformation that companies have been on and bringing in the aspect of environmental, social, and economic well-being is a horrible word, but that balance that we need to strive for.
Right.
Bring those into these digital programs. So it's not about saying it's something special and new and exciting. It is all of those things, of course, but it's actually leveraging in a way that makes sense for those projects that we currently have. So a sustainable transformation is really about understanding not only the economic aspects that we have within the organization, but also how that plays out into the social responsibilities that we have as a company, and also the environmental. So whether that is how do we then take product back and recycle it, or how we then design for maintenance or design for recycling. All of those come into this activity. So it's not just looking at the problem in a in a stovepipe. It is about understanding how each individual discipline interacts with the other in that context of sustainable transformation. It's about altering the culture of an organization, yes, but also changing the perspective that we have on what we do and how we do what we do in order to benefit our clients and our environment.
And I think the other angle of sustainable would also be something that can be sustained over a period of time. When you bring all these elements together, you are enabling the business to sustain the initiative, the momentum they are building in being more sustainable.
But I would also put it into a different one. It's about enabling a continuous improvement to happen,
right.
because ultimately we are already on a continuous improvement within organizations, and what we're doing is actually, as you said, making sure that it isn't a 1 quarter or 1 year fad. It is something that we ingrain into our culture. We drive forward consistently year upon year upon year, and it's not. We should not just see it as a campaign that we tick the boxes, job done. That's not what we're talking about here.
Awesome. And what role can technology play in this sustainable transformation journey?
Well, as I said, it's one of the core pillars of how we enable this transformation. I think if we look at the techniques, they're relatively old, sort of starting way back in the 80s. But really, it's the move to a digital hub or a digital core is vital for what we need. We need to have connected devices, so that's where IoT comes in. We need to have data fabrics so that we're not moving large volumes of data around, but we understand where that data is. We need to bring in, obviously, analytics, and certainly advanced analytics into this. And it's about looking at that as a whole, as an enabler. Technology will enable this transformation and will continue that transformation going forward. So that's one element, that if we're talking about information technology. But technology is also going to come in when we're looking at the new materials needed in order to do carbon capture, or carbon sequestration, or whatever we want to call it. So there are two elements of technology. There's one that will support the transformation, and the other one that will alter how we actually interact with the natural world. So I think technology is quite key to enabling us to reach those ambitious goals. Well, they're not quite as ambitious as they should be, but anyway, to reach the goals that we have, we're going to have to leverage both of those elements quite strongly.
Right, and that's something that we at Omdia have also found in our research, that the enterprises want to do the right thing, but then the problem is where to start, and a lot of them get confused with the completely ever-changing, environment for reporting and in compliance, and the legal issues that come around it, and the fact that different governments in different nations, different regions have different requirements for both reporting as well as capturing and storing the data. And the other thing is a lack of understanding around which technologies will actually help them solve these problems. So how can IBM help in that scenario?
I think it also comes down to the perspective that the client has. So if it is an operational technology, then we would probably look at something like inventory balancing, or we may look at the supply chain and the circularity that comes with that. So there are things that customers are doing today with existing technologies that we can interact with and improve on. So it's not about saying rip and replace. It's not going to work in this new world. It's about saying you have technology. We may need to lay down, let's say, a data fabric element, or there may be an analytics layer that needs to come in. But those are safe technologies because we're going to be needing them anyway for whatever the legislation changes are going to be. Then the second part is that when we start to collect that data, we need to put it into a repository that enables us to deal with the ever-changing landscape of the regulatory reporting. So it's not about saying I'm collecting for the report. What I'm doing is I'm collecting in order to report. Then what we need to look at is which reports or which elements of these reports make best sense for me at this moment in time, and then bring them into a life cycle. So it's not saying I'm fixed to this and therefore for the next 5 years, I'm not going to make any changes. It is really understanding that there are going to be these changes. But let's start with the data foundations. Let's start with the analysis. Those are safe areas. Let's start with data collection. It might not be perfect, but at least it's a starting point, and work with that existing infrastructure. And that's really what IBM can help. So that's with the technology. And then there's the second element, which is what do we need from a strategy point of view in order to meet and live in this changing, yes, let's call it a changing environment, which it will be. But then also it's going to change because our expectations are also going to change. So we as members of a company, we will have different expectations of the organization that will also cause additional challenges. But if we get those foundations correct, then I don't see why we need to go and say it has to be a specific technology that's brand spanking new. We can leverage a lot of the capabilities the company already has, add in some of those technologies that we are already using for digital transformation, right, and then bring in this whole idea that it is a changing landscape. As long as we design for it, we will be able to cope with it. And that's what we try and bring to our clients.
Absolutely. And the other element that we have found in our conversations is that no company or no organization can go it alone. You need to work with trusted partners to bring in the right set of tools. So what can enterprises expect when they partner with IBM around their sustainability strategies and initiatives?
Well, I would actually say that, and you pick up a really good point, it's ecosystems in this instance. Yeah. It's never going to be one company. So if they expect to partner with IBM and IBM is going to be the sole provider of a technology, then I think they need to reconsider. And I know that sounds strange coming from an IBM. Yeah. But fundamentally, what we do is work with communities. It is about open source within IBM. It is about that ecosystem. Our partner channels are extremely important to us from a delivery point of view, as well as a technology viewpoint. We know what we're good at, and we also know what our partners are good at. It is also quite interesting that the partners that we think we have today are not necessarily going to also be the partners that we need for tomorrow. So that partner landscape will change and that ecosystem will change. And we're seeing some of that as well. And so IBM is really working in that changing landscape with that moving myriad of different organizations that need to come to bear. And we believe that we have the ability, because of our history, to change, to also manage that change on behalf of our clients and also within that broad ecosystem that we have. So, I think we're uniquely placed in that sense.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Sven, for being with us today and sharing your perspectives on sustainable transformation and how IBM can help organizations undergo that sustainable transformation. It was so nice to have you with us today.
And thank you.
This is Hansa Iyengar, and you've been listening to the Omdia Fast Chat with Sven Strasberg from IBM. Thank you so much for joining us today.